How many people in here have heard my behavior speech today? All right, that's not enough. We've got to do it again. I'm going to lecture today. We're going to keep going, but I want to go over something first. The flow chart for the college. We've got Dean Parrish up here. And then you have 4 deans. Athletics are up here. Each dean has 4 departments underneath them. So, business administration is right here. There's a department chair, who is Gerald Seals. And then the dean is Sarah Bryant. Well, you remember me telling you about the apples and oranges? How when there's always an area where they overlap, and it's in that space where they overlap that you learn, that things get done, you make money. Well, these four deans went to Dean Parrish for a meeting and then sent an email out that they had decided that classes would start at 7:45 instead of 8 next semester. And there were going to be a committee to decide if there would be classes after 3 o'clock. Well, the classes after 3 o'clock are not going to happen. We got 700 athletes. They're not going to go to class after 3 o'clock. The coaches have a fit, and they bring in too much money. So they can have all the committees they want. That's going to never happen. But when they decided that they're going to have 7:45 classes, like we do now, that was because of COVID. And now that COVID is gone, there's no reason why we can't start a class at 8 o'clock instead. And all of these professors down here started writing emails to the dean that said, "You didn't ask us. You didn't ask us. We want it to start at 8. Students don't show up till 8. I commute for an hour and a half. 7:45 is difficult to get to, and no more COVID. We want to start at 8. And the dean says, it's already been decided. We had a meeting, and, I should have asked you, but I didn't. So in the midst of those emails, when in business, when you have one issue that everybody starts talking about, it always falls into another issue. And then it falls into another issue. Rarely in business does one issue get decided that it doesn't affect others. Well, the idea that these deans did not talk to Dean Parrish, and we now have a meeting on Monday for the business, 2 female professors, one Monday and one yesterday, had to close class, cancel class, tell everybody to go home midway through because people were misbehaving, yelling, screaming, laughing, standing up, coming in and out, didn't have their book, weren't attending classes. Both of these particular professors didn't have anything to do with them being female, but they're both timid, as opposed to a female or a male that wouldn't be, and they were scared that this disruption was in their classroom. So we went from a meeting having to do with communication to now a meeting having to do with behavior of students. Just so happens there's already a committee to determine whether female professors are being harassed on campus. And that committee started because we had 5 female professors quit over the summer. And the president and the Dean Parrish want to find out, why did they quit? Did they quit because they're harassed at Newberry? I don't think so. One got fired, 3 went to a Division I school, and 1 left to go to their dream job that they'd always wanted. Okay, so there are other reasons that they left that didn't have anything to do with harassment. But while this committee is worrying about female harassment and we're worrying about communication, it turns into this big deal for Monday, and we got this big meeting Monday with 20-something people to discuss student behavior. All right? And I read to the other class some of the emails that I've gotten, and this is what's going to happen, okay? I have never had behavior problems in my class, ever. And there are people in here that have had me before. I'm blessed with that. I'm blessed to have good students. I'm blessed that the students enjoy what I do, and so they're interested. And if I ever had a dispute or anything in my class, I would just, beat your ass. So, I don't think I'm going to have any problems. Well, they're going to give me rules on Monday. They're even talking about a class to teach you how to be professional, what forks and knives to use, how to tie a tie, how to put on a coat. Okay? They're trying to teach you how to come into the class. And what they're going to want to do, they're going to be professors that are going to want to leave the laptops down and the phones down and have you sit every other seat and put your hands in your lap and sit there and listen to them talk. All right? And I think that's a bunch of crap, because it's not my job to make you a better person. We have a pastor, we have the Muller Center, we've got the Black Student Association, we've got fraternities and sororities, we've got 50 coaches. They can tell you how to behave. My job is to teach you business. Now, if you are not a good person and you need help, we talked about the suicides. If you're angry and you want to hit the person sitting next to you, stay after class and tell me that, and we'll talk about that. But you can't misbehave in class, and I don't think any of you did, but other people have. So if you go to a business class and you see people in there misbehaving, you need to tell them, hey, stop misbehaving, or we're going to all be sitting in some classroom learning how to be disciplined. I mean, we're going to have classrooms to teach professionalism, and we're going to have a class to teach you how to behave, and we're going to have a class to teach you how to be an adult. I'm not going to do it, and I just don't think that's my job. But some of these people think that's their job. I'm a college professor, and it's my job to turn this person, into an actress and win an Academy Award, and it's just the way it is. Okay, so behave. If they tell me we've got to have rules, we'll do it for a couple of weeks and then we'll stop doing it. All right? But that's what's going to happen. Everybody understand that? Okay. I just want you to know. I want you to always know there's something going on in the background that affects you. you know, and that nobody tells you. All right, a shout out to my intern, Ida Hanson, for doing our photography. We will have YouTube videos now from now on, both from 101 and 210. Plus, she was on the golf team that won the tournament this weekend, and Noelia was on the golf team and won the tournament herself. So congratulations to the two of them. Now, what did we study? Forms of business. What was next? Economics. What was next? What was next? Now we are going to start with chapter 1, 2, 4, and 5. We won't get all of them today, but that's what we're doing. You need to read those chapters in the book. Remember, not only did we do forms of business, we also did chapter 15, which we found out that nobody had read when we did the practice test. This is chapter 14. 14, 15, all right. Sources of law. Edith, can you see that? Is that showing up okay?
I think so.
Okay. Sources of law. Where did law come from? You know, well, you got to figure the caveman had rules. You know, they had rules. You can't kill people. Was probably the very first law. And the Old Testament's got 649 laws, if you've ever wondered. And law has been around forever. But where did it come from? Right? The common law came from a judge in England. Got anybody from England in here? There's a judge in England named Blackstone. When I was in law school, we had to read Blackstone's Treatise on Laws. And it was from the 1200s. It was like 1250 or something like that. And in England, most things in America are from England, but in England, they had a bunch of villages. And every village had a judge, had a magistrate. And every little dispute, if a cow got out of the field and went to somebody else's field, they would go to the magistrate and he would decide whose cow is it. You know, whose cow is it? Is it the person where the cow is now, or is it the person where the cow used to be? And every judge would make a decision, and they may all be different. So then it comes to Judge Blackstone, and he does something so simple, yet so remarkable, that it basically changed English history and American history. Does anybody know what he did? He wrote it down. He wrote down what he decided. Now, in 1200, not many people could write. But Judge Blackstone could, and he wrote it down. And then, after he did that, every judge in all of these little villages said, well, the cow belongs in the first field because that's what Judge Blackstone wrote. Okay? And I've got a piece of paper, I've got his book here, and that's what says where the cow goes. Well, that idea of writing it down became what's called precedent, Latin for proceeding, the preceding decision. And if the preceding decision says one thing, the following judges would do the same thing. And that also is called stare decisis. You get extra points if you remember that on your exam. Stare decisis is this law affects this fact. You know, I give you a set of facts and you say Joe gets the company or Joe gets the partnership because of stare decisis. That's been already decided. Now, that common law goes from England to Europe to eventually to the U.S. Every country uses precedent except France. France is just a weird country. They have their own set of laws. It's called a code, and it's all different. Louisiana, which was part of the French Purchase, when Thomas Jefferson bought the Louisiana Purchase from France, Louisiana's got some weird laws because they're based on French laws. But generally, everybody in the world uses common law. So common law, the easiest way to say it is judge made. So the first source of law is judge made. The judge made in law. Right? So what is the second source of law? It is called a statute. Now, in order to understand the statute, we've got to look at chapter 4, which is separation of powers. In the U.S., we have Congress, President, which is the executive branch, and we have the judicial, which are the judges. The judicial, at the top, is the Supreme Court, and the way business people and lawyers identify the Supreme Court is they call it SCOTUS. Supreme Court of the United States. So you got SCOTUS, and then you got all these other courts all the way down into the states. So where's common law thought? In the judicial, right? These laws, these judges, all the way down to the Newberry City judge. From the Newberry City judge to the Supreme Court of the United States. They make decisions which become common law. Or they make decisions because some other judge has already made that decision. And so they just repeat it. Right? Congress, which is the Senate and the House of Representatives, they pass a bill. The bill says college students have to behave in class. All right? And any college that gets federal money, any college that gets student loans, the students have to behave in class. It could be something that simple. And so that bill that the Senate and the House passed means nothing. It's not a law. The bill goes to the president. The president signs it, and it goes back to the legislature, and it then becomes a statute. The second source of law is a statute. And that's a written piece of paper in a book or in your internet. You can look it up on your phone. When I was in law school, you know, the law school library is bigger than this building. And if I wanted to go find out what the DUI law was in North Carolina, because I had somebody that wanted to know that, I had to go find the North Carolina laws, and then I had to go look through the index of the book to try to find the driving under the influence laws. And it might not be under driving, it might be under alcohol, and it was a pain to go find the piece of paper that had that law on it. Now you type in North Carolina DUI law and it pops up. Now, so we've got common law, common law, statute, and now the executive president has regulations. Let's say a statute is Americans must pay taxes. Americans must pay taxes on their income. All right, so that becomes a bill. And you have to pay taxes. So what? Who's going to come get it? The senator's not going to come get it. The House of Representatives is not going to come get it. It's just a law, and it sits there. So the president appoints the IRS, and the IRS collects the taxes. And there are agencies that enforce the president regulations. They may be FBI, they may be Securities and Exchange Commission, they may be the American Disabilities Act, they may be pollution, they may be water. All these laws get passed, and the president regulations are the one that do what I call the ABC agencies. The ABC agencies. And there may be 100 of them. All right, but the ABC agencies enforce regulatory law. Now, everybody understands the separation of powers. Okay, this is high school civics, except probably for Francisco. So, common law is the first one, statute the second one, the third is regulatory. Those are the main three sources of law. There's one more that we don't deal with in this class too much, but we will deal with it a little bit, all right? And that is constitutional. There are some laws that affect business that are directly in the Constitution, not a statute and not common law, but they're actually in the piece of paper. Now, anybody here taking constitutional law and political science? Okay. You are? Okay, that's a good class, Dr. Dennis Cambridge? Yeah. All right. You don't tell him this, but I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about the U.S. Constitution in 5 minutes. All right, everything you need to know about U.S. Constitution in 5 minutes. All right. The British owned America, and India, and South Africa, and Australia, and a bunch of other places. But the British owned America. And the problem was that the British politicians never came to America. The soldiers did. So the British soldiers are the result of the U.S. Constitution. We fight a war from 1776 to 1780. We win, all right, the British soldiers leave, and in 1781, we decided we need a constitution, we're a new country. What they put in the Constitution, what the citizens were scared of, is we don't want our army to do the same thing to us that the British Army did. All right? They just didn't trust military, period. So they didn't want, now, so the British Army, if they were hungry, they came to your farm and took your food. That's what the soldiers did. So we have the Fourth Amendment. Okay, you can't search and seize goods from somebody's property without a warrant. That necessitates a warrant, stops people from coming onto your land and taking your food. And that's because the British Army did that. If you did something that was against the law, the British soldiers arrested you and put you in jail and never let you out. You'd sit there a year. So we have the Eighth Amendment. You get bail if you go to jail. You get bail. The British Army would want people to confess. So they would hold them, or they would beat them, or they would, put them in the snow, and put them in the hot weather, dump them in the well. They'd do anything they could to get them to confess. So we have the Fifth Amendment. You do not have to confess against yourself, testify against yourself. The British Army would never give them a trial. They didn't have trials. So we have the Sixth Amendment. You are entitled to a trial. If you were against King George and you stood on the corner yelling, "King George is a son of a bitch, I want my tea out of the harbor, I don't want to pay taxes on my tea," they picked you up and put you in jail. So what do we have? First Amendment. First Amendment, freedom of speech. If I wanted to stand on the street corner with the 5 of you, right, I got freedom of assembly because the British soldiers would break you up. You can't stand more than one person in a place. They'd break up the groups because they were scared they were going to revolt. So when they write the Constitution, if you're ever not sure about anything having to do with the Constitution, think of, what did the British soldiers do? And you usually can figure it out. Everybody understand that? Okay? You're welcome. All right. We are going to deal with the 4th, the 5th, and the 14th Amendments. The 4th conveniently has 4 things in it. The 5th Amendment has 5 things in it. Not on purpose, that's just the way it worked out. The 14th Amendment is pretty long, but we're only going to deal with one chapter of it. What's in the Constitution and in the 4th, 5th, and 14th that affects sources of law is something that's called process. You may have heard it on TV, you may have heard it in a classroom, you may have heard it in a movie. Due process means fair. The American business law tries to be fair. All right? A bankruptcy tries to be fair. They try to give people a chance to start over. Lawsuits having to do with partnerships try to be fair. Try to give something to each party. It's rarely where somebody just completely loses. Due process means you can't lose what you have, whether it's an individual right, whether it's a driver's license, whether it's the right to speak for a First Amendment, whether it's going to school and being a student, whether it's being deported, right? Because, you start making double bogeys, so they want to deport you. You don't lose any of that without due process. Due process means you go to a judge. Due process means you get a warrant. Due process means you get to talk to the other side and find out what their evidence is. Due process means you get to trial. You get bail. Due process is the small little word that means everything. Everything. In America, you get due process. My first semester at Newberry College, 6 years ago, if you go to the Student Affairs disciplinary hearing, if you ever get a letter from Student Affairs that says you have to come to a disciplinary hearing, call your parents, call your coach, and call me, because that letter is horrible. Right? And you don't want to go to that hearing if you can help it. But first semester I was here, had a fraternity guy go to a party. At the party were some Citadel cadets. Those of you who don't know what Citadel is, it's a military college here in South Carolina. And these two Citadel cadets were there, and one of them was hitting on this guy's girlfriend. So he gets in an argument with the Citadel cadet about his girlfriend. The other Citadel cadet comes running across the dance floor to help. So the other fraternity guy sees him running and meets him with a punch. One punch. But because the guy's running full speed, and because the punch caught him in the jaw, it was $30,000 in medical expenses. They had to rebuild the bottom of his face. So he gets a letter to go to Student Affairs. When you go to Student Affairs, you get to take a professor with you. And this guy said, would you go with me? He was in my class. I never had been, but I've been in 1,000 jury trials. I said, sure, I'll go. So I went to disciplinary hearing, and they said, Professor Banks, you can't come in. We brought 5 witnesses that were there. They said, oh, we don't talk to witnesses. The only thing, your guy can come in and tell us what happened in his words, but that's it. And I said, well, is the other person here? And they said, no, they didn't come. They just sent the police report. So the entire hearing was reading a police report that said somebody's got $30,000 in medical expenses and that my student hit him. So my student was kicked out of school. And, I was new. I didn't know any better. I wrote letters. I wrote emails. I went all the way up to the president of the college and said, the code of conduct says students get the United States Constitution protections. I said, your code says that, but they don't do that in the hearing. So, you know what they did? They took that sentence out. They took that sentence out. So now when you go to the code of conduct hearing, you don't get all of this. It's either you either did it or you didn't do it. You're either in school or you're out of school. Now, I was able to get him back in school after a semester, and I was able to get his record expunged. because the insurance company paid all the damage and the cadet's family didn't sue, so it had a good ending. But my point is, due process is a big deal. It may be a student hearing, it may be a traffic ticket. I've done 6 death penalty murders. It may be a death penalty murder. Due process is a big deal. So jumping ahead to exams, you throw due process in there at the proper point, you get extra credit. Right? Now, I'm not going to give you a test that says list the 3 sources of the law. I'm not going to give you a multiple choice test that says, the sources of law are common law, A, B, statute, D, all of the above. That's not college education. I will give you a fact situation where somebody gets involved in the legal system. And you will need to tell me this is a source of law issue. These facts involve a statute that came from the legislature, not common law or not regulatory. These individuals in the fact situation need due process. And to get due process, they would use the 14th Amendment. We'll talk about that Friday. The answers I give you, just layer them on. You form a business, check. Somebody steals something, ethics, check. They get involved in the judicial system. Is it the 3 sources of law are common, statutory, and regulatory, and constitution? And in this case, it is statutory. Check. Check off what I've given you. If you check the issues, you make an A. Everybody can give me the answers. All right, any questions? We're going to be going faster, and it's a lot of material, so don't ever hesitate to not ask questions. Make sure you got good notes. Take pictures of the board if you need to. The YouTube videos will start being posted this week. Use them to supplement your notes. Don't use them to not come to class. All right? Thank you.